Housekeeping still remains the most important business of the world. It engages the hearts and minds of more people and calls for higher qualities than any other occupation. Each woman faces it single-handed. She must know how to cook, know food. She must know how to set her table attractively. She must know how to make her home comfortable and inviting. She must know the worth of labor-saving devices and how best to conserve her time and energy. She must know clothes, how to buy and how to make them. She must face death to bring children into the world. She must raise them, care for them, and pilot them safely to the threshold of manhood and womanhood.
The 1930s started with an economic crash of the stock markets. The specific date of the crash was October 29, 1929, more commonly known as the Black Tuesday. A variety of reasons are used as theories to explain the outburst of the crisis. Some economists say the uneven distribution of wealth that derived from the Roaring Twenties was the cause. Others put the blame on the agricultural slump or the international instability caused by World War I. Poor level of preparation that the financial sector and the federal government had caused a deep crack on the economic development, especially in the United States. There was no insurance offered to unemployed workers, and so demand fell drastically. The consumer economy crashed, thus entering into what is called the Great Depression. During the 1930s, the economic instability and the halt in consumer economy resulted in the need for people to engage in different sorts of activities. The radio culture skyrocketed, and comedy programs such as Amos and Andy, soap operas, and sporting events were very popular. Musically, swing was on its highest. Ballroom dancing and dance halls in the country became a great place to be. In short, entertainment industry was very benefited. Despite the fact that people had no money to spare, entertainment was a very popular way to live life outside of the economic troubles.
America found itself unable to sell her farm goods and manufactured products abroad. World trade in turn faltered as foreign countries imposed severe tariffs of their own in retaliation. Many key industries were struggling even before Black Tuesday. Throughout the boom times of the Roaring Twenties, agriculture had been in a tailspin. The textile, steel, automobile, and railroad industries were also beginning to feel the pinch. As the unemployment rate increased, most families bought even less. The gap between the handful of wealthy Americans and the rest of the population got even wider.
The Depression did little to alter the role of women in the American workplace. According to the 1930 census, almost 11 million women, or 24.3% of all women in the U.S., were gainfully employed. 3 out of every 10 of these working women were in domestic or personal service. Of professional women, 3/4 were school teachers or nurses. Women in the 1930s, in fact, entered the workforce at a rate twice that of men, primarily because employers were willing to hire them at reduced wages. Their wages were meager compared with those of men. The economic depression reinforced the idea that well-paid work should primarily be for men and that the proper place for women to work was in the family home as unpaid workers. In unionized industries, however, women fared better. They constituted 7% of all workers in the automobile industry and 25% of all workers in the electrical industry. The Integrated International Ladies Garment Workers Union had 200,000 members and secured for pressers in Harlem high wages of $45 to $50 per week. Such pay was exceptional. For the most part, women worked long hours for low wages in the 1930s. More than half of all employed women worked for more than 50 hours a week, and more than 1/5 worked for more than 55 hours. According to the Social Security Administration, women's average annual pay in 1937 was $525, compared with $1,027 for men. The Depression caused women's wages to drop even lower, so that many working women could not meet basic expenses. Certain industries such as canning, textiles, candy, and meat packing gladly hired women at reduced wages. Added to these poor working conditions and low wages, women who worked faced social criticisms in the 1930s, since they were believed to be taking jobs away from men. In most cases of the replacement of men by women, however, women were doing work at wages most men would not accept.
Okay, and as Sebastian was saying, we can now see how during the 1930s, women faced a very complicated situation in terms of work conditions and their possibility of actually doing it. Married women working was something very rare and unusual to see in society, and most people considered they should dedicate their time to other things, such as taking care of children and doing house chores. There was a common conception that woman's place was in home and not in an office, and that women working was something very dangerous for society, basically because they were taking jobs away from men who were more important. Both private and public companies dismissed large numbers of married women and preferred to employ men instead. Even jobs that were traditionally dominated by women, such as teachers and librarians, were being affected by this same phenomenon, and the percentage of women in these places diminished significantly too. In 1930, for example, 81% of teachers had been women, while in 1940 only 76% were women. Also, the percentage of women librarians fell significantly during this period of time, passing from 91 in 1930 to 86 in 1940. Here we can see how married women were seen as a men's complement instead of unique and independent individuals. Therefore, it was very rare and strange to see them fighting for their dreams and doing things that their husbands could do for them, such as working, for example.
The role of women in the novel is illustrated through Curly's wife, as the only female character with a frequent apparition during the novel, and despite her important role, she is nameless. In the character, the objectification of women is portrayed. She is referred as Curly's wife all the time, which displays the lack of importance of women and their total dependence on men. Also, the relationship she has with her husband and how the author describes Curly as a possessive man that always questions his wife diminished the woman's importance in the story, seeing them just as another man's possession. It's important to clarify that women are not only seen as possession in the novel, but also as troublemakers or seductresses, as in the story of mankind and different religions, women portrayed a sin or temptation for man.
Throughout the time, some historians have argued that feminism died during the Depression. The economic emergency of the 1930s led to a substantial political gain for women. The expansion of social welfare services in the New Deal, a field dominated by women, led to the appointment of more women in high government positions than ever before. As feminists, these women used their government posts to work on behalf of other women. New Deal politician Molly Dewson observed that the change from women's status in government before Roosevelt is unbelievable. Prominent women appointed by Roosevelt included Frances Perkins, the Secretary of Labor, Ellen Sullivan Woodward, head of Women's and Professional Projects of the Work Progress Administration, Josephine Ruch, Assistant Secretary of Treasury, and Lucille Forster McMillan, Civil Service Commissioner. These and other appointments marked first for women: the first cabinet member, the first director of Mint, first woman ambassador, first judge on the Court of Appeals. Feminism, against what some historians have said, has never stopped as a movement, not even in the Great Depression, and it is important what the movement has accomplished during the decades. In the 1930s, focusing on including first women in the high political positions. This was supported by the first wave of feminism that focused on voting, having rights in education, and how this movement has evolved through time, and demanding more for the culture to change, a chauvinist, male chauvinist and sexist culture that we live in. It's very important what they have accomplished and what they have been working on, and it's something that involves every one of us. It's a change that it's immediate. It's necessary for society to develop correctly, and it's in constant work. Even nowadays, with the different types of feminism that are present, and they are fighting for what's right for women, and not only for women but for society in general.
Creando perfección en la industria de la piratería. Producciones Shark. En MP3.
Ahí se menea, 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 se menea. Papa l'americano, papa l'americano.